Let me just.
Okay, the recording has started. Welcome, everybody. We're so happy to have you join us today, and we're so excited to welcome Dr. Susie Wyatt for our speaker today. She is also one of our new advisory board members, so we're just thrilled that she's going to meet some of you. Some of you, I hope, from the board are here, and many of our members and followers from the Alliance are here to meet. I would say one of the avatars in recovery. I know I've been focusing on avatars the last 2 months, and here's another one. So welcome, Dr. Susie Wyatt. She's going to talk about recovery is more than just sobriety. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a bio about Dr. Susie Wyatt. And then I'll share a little bit about how I met her, but let me just share her bio first. Dr. Wyatt is an integrative developmental psychiatrist with expertise in treatment of trauma, addiction, dual diagnosis, and complex psychiatric disorders. She synthesizes functional medicine principles, working with your own biology, honed therapeutic skills, trauma-informed, psychodynamic, and EMDR trained, and allopathic, traditional Western medical training to optimize treatment outcomes and a conservative use of medication. She is the founder, owner, and executive medical director of Sovegna Center for Addiction and Recovery and Trauma Resilient Collaborative of Utah. She is the author of Health Resiliency Stress Questionnaire, which is fantastic. She has received many awards for teaching, service, initiative, advocacy, and excellence of care. Welcome, Dr. Susie Wyatt. We're so happy you're here. And we're going to let you take the floor. And then what we'll do is have question and answers at the end. So I kind of lost your video on there.
Oh, mine?
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, so welcome everybody. We're going to have Dr. Susie share a few slides, and then we'll open up to Q&A. Welcome, Dr. Susie Wyatt.
Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to be invited to speak to this audience. And I just want to give a little background about how I met Patty. And
okay.
I was previously the medical director for an organization called Odyssey House. And I kept pushing Odyssey House, which is a community addiction treatment center. I kept pushing them to start looking at this piece of nutrition because, as we all know, without having nutrition stabilized, then we cannot ever really get into a full place of recovery. And then all of a sudden I heard, we found a woman and she's going to give this lecture. And I was expecting that there would be maybe about 20, 30 people from more of the executive team. And I walked into this, it was, I think, a high school gymnasium. And it was completely packed with all of the patients as well.
Right.
And Patty's presentation and the concept she was talking about, I'm like, oh my gosh, woman is like gold. And then life, just kind of kept going on. And then I think it was a few months later, we met up at a nutraceutical, like a rep dinner.
Yeah, we did.
And I looked at her, I'm like, I know you. And we just became fast friends. And I so deeply appreciate the principles that Patty has introduced me to, looking at how do we get to recovery through nutrition. And when I learned about the Alliance, I just thought, what a phenomenal organization and concept, and have met other people through Patty. And I wish I had more time to spend more time with Alliance, but hopefully here soon.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Susie.
So yeah, thank you, Patty. And I just like one quick housekeeping thing. Since I'm sharing my screen, can you see like that? You see like on the right hand side of the screen, like the Zoom profile that I see?
I just see you.
Okay.
We just see you. Everybody else is off, just you.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I didn't want I would change the profile if you couldn't see my slides very well.
No, we can see your slides and we can see your beautiful face.
Oh, Um, um, so Patty asked me if I would provide just like a very informal lecture, and I pulled some slides together from lectures that I give more along the lines of neurobiology about what recovery looks like, and how I look at recovery is that we are all in recovery, whether or not we are in recovery from a chemical substance, or we're in recovery from trauma, or we're in recovery from bad relationships. We're all broken, and we're all always in recovery. And we just get better at being in recovery. So I don't feel that like the principles I'll be talking about are limited to just people with chemical dependency, but are really more universal. And I really believe that that concept is super important. As I'm working with people who have serious, traditional addiction issues, to help normalize that that all of these things that we're going to be talking about are definitely achievable. And there's not just one way to recovery. There are so many roads to recovery as well. But when we understand the scaffolding and how our body works, excuse me, and why different things are really helpful for maintaining sobriety, then we're truly living in a state of recovery. And that to me is analogous to living also in a state of grace. So at that more universal level. So hence the title of this presentation today. And if anyone has questions along the way, please feel free to pipe up, and Patty's going to be managing that. Looks like there's something going on here with my slides, but this slide is to really demonstrate two important concepts of what recovery is about. And another word for recovery to me is having homeostasis, having balance in our life. When we are in a balanced state, we typically are also in recovery too. And why I have these two balls that are on this balance beam, it's because we're looking at the reward pathway, which becomes the addiction pathway when it's aberrant. And then we're looking at the counterbalance with the regulation pathway. And regulation pathway, that's just a term that I've made up to kind of house the stress hormone system, and which is really our regulation. It regulates everything metabolically in our body, and it also taps into our emotional regulation too. So those two concepts are really important when we're looking at how do we get to recovery. We need these two systems to get back in balance. And then this is a different way to look at the same thing that I just mentioned. And the only point of this really busy slide is to understand. You can see on the left-hand side, there's again the reward pathway. The right-hand side of each of these tables is a regulation pathway. And what I did here is I just went through a bunch of scientific papers, and I really wanted to understand how do these two systems truly overlap in their neurobiology and those shared structures. And the common denominators here are amygdala. Some of you may be familiar with that term, and we'll talk briefly about that too, especially if anyone has questions. The amygdala really is that quintessential brain structure that manages and sifts through, if you will, our emotional tone, our emotional responses, and then the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is, I look at that as the true brain-body connector, and what I mean by that is it's taking all the information from our brain, including our emotional responses, and communicating that with the rest of our body. So it's going to be involved in things even like heartbeat regulation. And then the ventral tegmental area, this is really driving reinforcement. And you can see on the very left-hand column where it says positive reinforcement for survival, there's like an emphasized little green arrow there. And that arrow is that's my way to signify you get massive reinforcement through that system. And that is evolutionarily in place to help remind us, like, oh, this felt really good, so I'm going to get a lot of reinforcement to do this over and over again. Or, whoa, that stove was really hot, I'm not going to do that. It gives us reinforcement not to do that, and it communicates with other structures in the brain. But these, when we're looking at addiction, we start to see aberrations, or we start to see things that are not in balance anymore with both of these systems. And then we can, we'll talk about how we get back into balance then, or into that recovery state. And then this is going into a little bit deeper dive. People typically like to know a little bit more about these structures. So I'll just run through these really fast. And if I sliced my brain down the center here, that's what we would be looking at. And here is that amygdala again that we just talked about, and the basic functions of these structures that are part of the limbic system. Limbic system is the emotional engine, and there's that hypothalamus that we just talked about again that mind-body connector, our emotional state. The hippocampus is really important to people when they're in the throes of addiction, or let's just say throes of recovering from anything stressful. Typically we have poor memory, capacity for memory, and that has everything to do with that emotional overlap and hippocampal function. And then that cingulate gyrus, I would always like to mention this one a little bit. When we're talking about recovery, I look at this orange reddish bridge, our structure is like a bridge, and it bridges our emotional, our memory bank to our prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex, as maybe a number of you know already, that's our executive center, and that's where we process and we understand, what do I need to do next? And when we are in high states of distress, even neurobiologically, even if there's not a history of trauma, but if we're hijacking that reward pathway, this cingulate gyrus doesn't function effectively. So we lose that connection, if you will, of good executive function responses. And then this little guy kind of demonstrates very similar principles that we just talked about from a different vantage. And now we're taking that hypothalamus and we're looking at how does this affect our physiology down below. And so taking that hypothalamus, that mind-body connector, and what is it really doing to the rest of our body? Because we're going to see impacts if we're having any kind of dysregulation in, again, either of those systems. Going back to the teeter-totter, anytime we have an imbalance, we're going to then start seeing imbalance in our physiology too. And then this is just to emphasize how critically important this whole system is to the rest of our metabolic function. And when we're talking then about how do we get back to recovery, I always want to be mindful. It's not just, I just have to deal with my cravings. I have to understand, or it gives me so much more leverage to stay in a state of recovery when I really understand the scaffolding of why dealing with the craving is so important. It's because it's actually going to affect the rest of my physiology too. It's not just a thought, and it's not just an action. So, and then there's norepinephrine, and that's going to affect everything too. So the point of this slide, very busy slide, but the point is everything's connected. So recovery is more than just sobriety. All right, and now this is kind of a similar slide like we just saw, but oops, now we're looking at the addiction, more of the addiction side. So the previous brain slides, that was about emotional regulation, and now we're looking at reward regulation. And you can see that there are some overlaps here with that amygdala, and then this nucleus accumbens in that ventral tegmental area. This is that reinforcement. We're having the same kind of trajectories, or I should say similar trajectory through this yellow structure, the insula. How are we going to manage all of this? But we need to get it still to that prefrontal cortex. And how I like to start sorting out that and getting to recovery, that consistency of recovery is, and why, can you see when I use the arrow?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
So in this prefrontal cortex area, it is absolutely critical to raise whatever emotional state we're experiencing, whatever craving we're experiencing. It's so critical to raise it to prefrontal cortex, because again, this is where the executive center resides. So we start sorting out, what are my needs versus what are my wants. I may want to go down to the local bar and drink a bottle of wine. I may want to go shoot up heroin. I may want to go spend thousands of dollars. I may want to get into a relationship to avoid the emotional content or the stress of my day or the whatever. And when we're functioning in our wants and not functioning in our needs, then we're going to create more problems, if that makes sense. And so raising awareness becomes that critical piece for sustained recovery. And let's see, that's another slide looking at the same. Oh, I thought I pulled up a bunch of these out. Okay, sorry, I thought, maybe I pulled up the wrong slide deck. These are lots of slides. Okay, here we go. This is what I wanted to get to. So with getting to that executive function, this is how or the area of our brain where we are able to hold our attention and prevent ourselves from getting distracted. And for some people with different other diagnoses, some of that may be a little bit more challenging. However, the basic principles here, when I can bring attention to something and I can get myself out of a highly emotionally charged amygdala on fire state, I can then start bringing my attention there. I can start planning out, reasoning, create a solution, call a sponsor, go have some protein, and I start to make more and more appropriate assessments, and then hence my behavior follows through. And that's how we start building more and more trust in ourselves. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
And so the point of just kind of really racing through all that neurobiology is really to drive home that sobriety is so much more than, recovery is so much more than just sobriety, than just white knuckling it, than just telling myself, nope, I'm not gonna do that again. No, we have to really approach ourselves with so much more compassion and understanding about how these processes all connect together. And the more and more we can work on that emotional regulation or that regulation pathway, we can really affect then normalization of that reward pathway too, if that makes sense. All right. So, and this is kind of what I was just explaining. I was a little ahead of myself here, but so this little guy, going back to my yoga guy. So we're talking about that HPA. So we're talking about the emotional regulation system. and how it affects our body. And when we start noticing more and more, what are my feelings? And I could just insert here, what are my cravings? And I look at this heart space as really, my analogy for it is the weather. And the more and more I look at the weather, whether it's outside or inside, I then can make more and more effective decisions about the weather. But I have to raise it to awareness. I have to open my eyes and look at the weather outside to know when I have to grab an umbrella. Oops. And so that first step is raising that awareness and then choosing that effective behavior. And now I'm using that whole circuit of the limbic system in an effective way. I'm bringing all of that stuff and taking off that intense tone from the limbic system, as well as on my physiology here, bringing it up to awareness and saying, what do I need to do versus what do I want to do? And when we're choosing effective behavior, when we're being honest with ourselves, like, yeah, I can't go down that street because I know I'm going to set myself up. Or, yeah, I just had an argument with my brother, and I'm so sad or so rageful right now. I need to address that effectively versus maybe what I want to go do. And when we're focusing more and more on effective behaviors and our needs, that's how we start building a relationship with ourselves and building that trust. And how I look at my definition of addiction is it's simply avoidance of self. The more we avoid ourselves, the more we're disconnecting all this neurobiology, and we're driving all of that neurobiological energy into our body, into our brain. And it does have to go somewhere. It's, the laws of physics. The energy has to go somewhere. And when we don't choose the effective behavior, we're just creating more and more dysregulation internally. So when we choose effective behaviors, simply by looking at that weather and raising it to awareness, we start to normalize more and more. We're creating more and more healthy pathways through that neurobiology, and we're getting closer and closer to a state of consistent recovery. And then we get self-efficacy. All right, so this slide, just really quickly, this starts looking at what starts happening with these structures when there's high emotional load, high substance use, and actually, I just want to, I didn't include this slide, but a really critical piece to understand, going again back to that teeter-totter. In rat models, it is clear as day, I can induce limbic system dysregulation with a rat model simply by giving it a lot of an addictive substance. So I can get complete alteration of all of these structures here in a very predictable manner just by giving substances. The reverse is also true, that if I shock or distress a rat model, I can predictably get the same alterations in the addiction pathway. And so when we're looking at recovery then, and we're looking at how do we start building resilience, it really, in my book, the things that are the lowest hanging fruit is getting to that place of emotional regulation, because we can look at that weather pretty effectively. We can include cravings in that weather pattern pretty effectively. And when we, again, start raising all of that to awareness, focusing on the needs versus wants, we start getting regulation of both these pathways pretty simultaneously. Versus just working with the cognitive piece and saying, okay, no, I can't do that. Well, if we're only staying in the cognitive, we're not getting resolution here. there may be other things that still need to get addressed, and without addressing everything systematically, we set ourselves up with higher potential for relapses. Oops. And let's see, anything else that I want to, something I do want to point out here, going back to the cingulate gyrus. So when we have dysregulation here, whether it's from substance use, serious trauma history, we just, these systems will get dysregulated if we're like even doing things like over exercising. It's, and I guess that's something I didn't bring up before, that that HPA system, or the regulation pathway, its job again is balance, and the system itself can't distinguish where the stress is coming from. That's part of the executive center. So I can cause serious dysregulation to this if I'm an elite athlete and I don't give myself the nutritional values that I need to keep the system healthy. And so I just want to drive that home, that we can really cause damage to the system, even from a lot of physical health related issues. And like getting in a car accident, this system has to work overtime. So I just want to drive that point home. But when we're talking then about emotional dysregulation, and we're talking about addiction, this cingulate gyrus, it is just, I mean, all these structures are so critical, but we can get into something that's called repetition compulsion, and that's a very predictable behavior response, and it's at an unconscious level. Just a reminder, all of these structures we're looking at here, these are all subcortical. They're below the cortex. The cortex is where we're doing our thinking and our processing. These are all more along lines of primitive brain. Oh, did someone have a question?
No, somebody needs to mute their phone, please. Please mute your phone. Sorry,
Yeah,
Susie.
no worries. And so this repetition compulsion, it's a psychobabble term, and it basically means we will compulsively repeat the things that we don't have conscious awareness about. And how that translates with recovery, if it's recovery from bad relationships, I may be back yet again in the same kind of relationship. Different person, different flavor, but same scoop of ice cream. And when we find ourselves back in the same situation, like, oh my gosh, how this happen again? There's stuff that we're not connecting to at the in these subcortical structures. We're not very predictably, we're not paying attention to what's going on in that internal weather. And the more and more we practice, what are my needs versus my wants? What are my needs versus my wants? We're exercising and making this cingulate gyrus pathway stronger and stronger in its connection in the way it was always meant to be. And so again, we start building up more and more trust within ourselves, because now we're using that positive reinforcement, that extra big green arrow. We're using that positive reinforcement in the appropriate way. So we're getting more and more effective behavioral changes. And then when we don't, when we're sending all that energy down into our body, these are the predictable outcomes that we will have in our physiology and in our psychiatry, in our psychology, if that energy is not being addressed appropriately through that cingulate gyrus into the prefrontal cortex, selecting our need versus our want. And there's a really excellent book that some of you may know. It's entitled "The Body Keeps the Score." Oh yeah, by Van der Kolk, and he talks in a lot of detail about this, more from a trauma perspective, But again, we can insert anything that it causes dysregulation to these pathways. And when and there are so many different diagnoses that can occur, and that then hinges on what genes we're carrying in our epigenetics and other details, and a lot more than we have time to discuss here. But the point is, when we have alteration, and I'm sure so many of you have seen this working with people who have serious addiction, very predictably, they're going to have a lot more physical health issues. And it's because of this relationship with these two different pathways and how it connects to the lower parts of our physiology. And let's see, oh, there we go. All right, and then this is I'm kind of shifting over here about what starts influencing what, and Patty and I have had so many great conversations about stress on that system, cortisol, adrenal function. I'm sure probably all of you are familiar with adrenal fatigue, leaky gut, and the whole kit and caboodle. And we start to see huge shifts then that occur in hormonal cascades. This one that I have under, let's see, can I go back? Can you see that whole pathway?
Well, we saw the graph.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to show show this pathway, and the point of bringing this pathway up is cortisol, which is kind of like the mothership, how I look at it, the mothership of metabolism. When cortisol is being, there's so much demand because we have so much disruption going on in the reward pathway, in the regulation pathway, cortisol has to come to the rescue. And it's integrated with all of with this whole hormone cascade. And how I look at this whole cascade simplistically is that cortisol keeps us alive. Its job is homeostasis, but we don't have to procreate. So we get a phenomenon called cortisol steal, and so all the resources, if we have so much demand for it, all the resources start pouring into that cortisol, that middle column, at the expense of now we're having progesterone, pregnenolone, testosterone, estrogen imbalances, and then we end up with things like adrenal fatigue, and what our body will end up doing. It's a really critical point here. So these are different stages of adrenal exhaustion, and what our body will inevitably do is it rises to the occasion again with cortisol, and then its production starts dropping off dramatically. And so we can see people on the labs who have really low cortisol levels. They can have POTS-like symptoms, and they can just feel so fatigued. They're cold. They have really low blood pressures. Their heart rates can be abnormal, and that can be a function of dysregulation of these two pathways. And what the body ends up doing is, and why cortisol starts dropping off here, is because cortisol it's an expensive product to make in the body, and we need lots of proteins in order to make cortisol. So when there's so much demand all the time, the body then says, screw you, I'm going to start changing the receptor sensitivity. So now I don't need much cortisol at all to have massive reactions and responses. And that's not a really good thing. You think like, oh, well, that's great adaptation. It actually ends up then sending other hormones into dysregulation as well. So complicated slide, but that principle is so important. Again, when we're looking at recovery, recovery is more than just sobriety. We have to get this stress hormone system back in regulation in order to have really good sustained recovery. There's my definition of addiction: avoidance of self, and we can fill in the blank whatever that addiction might be. And oh, my little graphic isn't working so well here. And I think we've kind of talked about this imbalance, but there's a visual for you about that. And then here are those structures that start becoming aberrant when we're now looking at the reward pathway, and when there's constant use, which just causes neurobiological dysregulation, and or if we haven't dealt with traumatic issues, or we haven't dealt with our physical health issues, and that regulation pathway is still aberrant, we're going to see these structures change in their areas of function. And really importantly, this is where cravings really start hijacking the brain. And if you go back to my little yoga guy and the feeling state, if we start shifting our focus and looking at cravings as just part of weather system, we don't just be. I always tell folks I work with, just because you have a craving, it doesn't mean that you have to use. It's just part of the weather system. I need to figure out, what do I need to do with this? I may need to call my sponsor. I may need to go for a run. I may need to eat some protein right now.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. And I include that because you taught me that, Patty. And nutrition just becomes such a critical piece of this. We have reinforcement and relapse, and everything is just dysregulated. So here is going back to that that first one of those first slides. Now we're looking at, like, on the outer columns, we're looking at toxic stress impact. We're looking at addiction. So these are now the aberrations that start occurring, and what all these side arrows are describing. You can see the how I look at this, at the pathology of these systems, is that there's kind of like a neurobiological collapse in terms of the function of these different structures. So everything is just a hot mess, and we end up having these different behavioral outcomes. And you can see by the descriptions, this is kind of like a psychiatric description. Excuse me, these are the addiction related descriptors. It's pretty much the same thing. These systems really collapse on each other. And so again, what we want to do when we're looking at getting to a place of recovery, not just sobriety, recovery means we are starting to really address this regulation pathway, starting to normalize it. And these two pathways, regulation and reward, become, they slowly get back to a state of normalcy. All right. And then oh gosh, I don't know where my other slide went to, but but we're going to kind of shift into, like, what are those components that and how can we get to recovery of this HPA, this hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, part of the regulation system. And this is just from a card that I hand out at different lectures, and so I just condensed a whole lot of information, like trying to just make it simpler. So these 5 pillars, how I look at, are the legs under the stool in order to create our foundation for true recovery. And these 5 pillars are the things that that patients, our clients, can absolutely do for themselves. And they may need a lot of coaching around every single one of these. And there's nutrition right in the middle, and for so many folks with addiction, for so many people in recovery, again, from anything, I'm sure you all know, we see irregular meal times, sometimes not eating, sometimes just nibbling on something, and it's crappy food. And And that is going to drive dysregulation of the HPA. It's going to continue that cycle. And then, of course, having a really good microbiome is critical. So we get good absorption, we shut down the leaky gut, and we get everything functioning well, again, at that microscopic level. And working in, go ahead.
I like your finger thing. That's like the villi in the intestines.
That's what?
Like the villi in the intestines.
Exactly.
You know, like...
That's exactly. Yeah. Sorry. That's exactly what I'm simulating. Yes.
Okay.
That's what yes. I have do my little finger show with my patients, and so when I see like a low cortisol, I see like their cholesterol panel that is like not great. It's not horrible, but it's not great. And I see their liver functions are not optimal, and they're pushing or they've gone beyond even allopathic levels. I'm like, all right, these are indicators that you have leaky gut. We can do lots of fancy testing, but I know that you have leaky gut and your symptoms display leaky gut.
Right.
So, and for those of you who don't know what I'm doing here, so what Patty just said, the little villi on, this is how our shag carpet on the intestinal wall should look like. And it should be wiggling around, and we have really great, these little finger-like projections that are critical for absorbing nutrients. And that can be disruptive for so many different reasons. But when we don't have a good microbiome, then we get retraction of those, and we get separation, and something called a gap junction becomes exposed, and so now we're not absorbing, and we're getting microtoxins in between the potential space between those two cells. And when that happens, then we set ourselves up for so many different metabolic related disorders, including a lot of autoimmune. So it's so critical to get this nutritional piece in a really healthy place. And Patty, I know, could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and teach me so much more. But the bottom line here is, when you can see this direct correlation, here's that HPA again that we talked about at the very beginning, that is involved with regulation of the body. It's intimately connected to the reward pathway, and it has a completely intimate connection also with this gut lining, that microbiome that I was just talking about. And when this is disrupted, we're going to have lots of pro-inflammatory compounds that are going to be flooding through our body. We are not setting ourselves up for recovery whatsoever if this is not addressed simultaneously. And then this is just emphasizing that food is so critical for as a prescription. And then it also looks at how, like when we're eating, this slide with the cocaine on there is demonstrating, excuse me, we get the same exact release through these different systems when we're using food as we do when we're using substances. And I should say very, very similar, not the same. And the only difference is the amount. And so when we're using food that's healthy, versus like, we could say food and sugar or food and cocaine here, but when we're using healthy food, we are influencing then again that pathway, going back to that cingulate gyrus, bringing it back to prefrontal cortex. I'm saying I may want to have that huge chocolate cake, but I need to have my eggs and toast, and we're bringing it to full consciousness about what we need to do. And you can see over here how cortisol is going to respond over time. And then let's see how we're on time. Okay, I'll wrap up here.
Yeah, that's good.
Then this,
I'm sure we have a lot of questions.
This is just a really quick slide, just talking about the importance of there's our vitamin C of methylation biochem. And I'm sure a number of you are familiar with MTHFR alterations. And this is all through folate cycle. Why am I bringing this up? Because it is critical. If a person has alterations in this pathway, it's got to get corrected, or else we can't get metabolism into a good place. And it drives neurotransmitter production, and it drives major antioxidant production. If we don't have enough glutathione, our liver is not going to be happy either. It's not going to take care of us. So we have to just better understand, what are these nutritional depletions? Do they have any SNPs in their genetics? And there's like the poor man's way of kind of looking at those labs without doing fancy genetics. This is kind of the same of what I talked about. Vitamin D is critical for that whole hormone pathway that we talked about. I think I see, as a psychiatrist, a disproportionate number of people who have serious vitamin D deficiencies. And if they aren't producing vitamin D, or if their skin isn't converting, they have to get supplemented. And my cutoff is 50 and above. Optimal is 60 to 80 on a blood level. As opposed to allopathic medicine, it goes down to 20 to 30 depending on the lab. And but if I don't have enough vitamin D or enough cholesterol, if I'm a meth user, I probably have none of this, and so none of this is functioning. And I'm going to feel crazy, and I can't make anything work. I can't make my brain work, and I can't produce even adequate amounts of dopamine to help myself feel better. All right, and I guess that's it.
Okay. Wow. Thank you, Susie. I think if you stop the share screen, I think you have to do it from your side, then we can pull up.
Oh, wait, that's new share. Oh, stop share. There it is. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, okay. We have a lot of folks on, so people can come on, unmute yourselves. I think you can do that from your side. Hopefully I don't have to do, I did mute a few people, but let me know if you can unmute. And Susie, thank you so much. I have questions, but I'm gonna like open it up to our audience here and our followers and members, just because I can talk to you. So Deborah Fila, I'd like to introduce her. Deborah Fila is actually our president of our board. So welcome, Deborah, and meet Susie. I know she hasn't met you personally yet. And Deborah, you have a question?
I do. And just so you know, guys, it's Phila. I married that Phila fella.
Oh, Phila.
So
okay. I always say Phila, but Phila.
Yeah. And yeah, that's right. Susie, thanks for joining our advisory board, and we're glad to have you on board. The question I had was, when you're talking about cholesterol and how it was really the mother load, right? It's so important to the system. And yet from a medical point of view, we act like cholesterol is the enemy. It's needed for many of the functions you were talking about for our cognitive health. And yet we're just trying to plummet it down to a low level so that we don't know who we are, and we aren't happy. We're depressed and losing our motor skills. So if you could comment on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Yep. And I just want to clarify. So I would say cortisol is the mothership, but cholesterol is so critical. And cholesterol, if a person's below 140, that's from my functional medicine training, that's what I would say is the standard. Below 140, a person really can't drive that whole hormone cascade, and then it's also going to cause disruption in the biophospholipid membranes of every single cell, and yes, so I get very concerned about really aggressive anti-cholesterol agents. It's not that I'm opposed to them, because there are people who definitely have genetics where they can't process cholesterol, and I'm happy that there are those meds available. But whenever possible, I just want to get that into a much healthier range, and using things that are simple, which I'm sure a number of you know about, like, with fish oil, that can be such a helpful way to re-regulate, but really critical is still that gut lining, and in order to heal the gut lining, then you can oftentimes get cholesterols to be in a healthier place.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Deborah, for the question. Anyone else a question for Susie or comment? Mary, it looks like you're up.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm in long-term recovery, and somebody talked about the vitamin D levels. I just got my lab working.
We're having a hard time hearing you, Mary.
Can you hear me now? Not really?
Yeah, it's kind of fuzzy. Can you hear her, Susie?
I can, it's really fuzzy,
It's
but
a
I
little
got vitamin
fuzzy.
D.
Is that better? Oops, wait a minute. Is that better?
Oh, yeah.
yes.
Oh, considerably.
Okay, so when you had mentioned the vitamin D, how I just got my lab back, and I'm a 26, and then you said it should be 50 to 60 or something.
Mm.
And I'm in long-term recovery, and I'm just curious, like, what kind of symptoms would you get with a like with that kind of a number?
Yeah. So level so general rule of thumb for me, anything that starts going below 50, if we have genetic predisposition for anything, we have higher risk. And so I can't say specifically like what you would be experiencing, but very often people at a 26 will have like low levels of energy. They can have things like sleep disruption. They can be more prone to anxiety, depression. And when people are really low, even to the single digits, I've had people who have been psychotic, have had significant psychosis, or like really highly dissociative symptoms. And just correcting vitamin D helps to support all of that metabolic function.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and
well, that's interesting because I have had the low energy, and so how many? Like, I do take a supplement. How much should I be taking a day?
Well, again, I'm not your prescriber, but with a 26, I would be supplementing a patient with 10,000 units a day, and would be doing that for about 8 weeks, and then drop that down to 5,000 as a maintenance.
Okay.
And typically, when a person has a level as low as you mentioned, then there's probably a genetic alteration. So meaning that that the body can't convert vitamin D effectively from the sun. And there are a lot of people who have something called a VRDQ alteration. And if you wanted to check that out, you could get that, do like a 23andMe on their medical panel, drop it into Genetic Genie, and then you can get a report on that. And as well as some other genes too.
Well, I had gastric bypass surgery, so that could be.
So vitamin D is not really so much gastric bypass. Vitamin B12 would be an issue there, and so having good supplementation. If you had methylation issues, but yeah, vitamin D is it's really critical, and actually in that range of 60 to 80. It is considered actually anti-cancer.
Oh, wow.
So it's cancer protective. It is respiratory disease protective. It is bone protective. Wow. It is more important. So like 26, that's risk for osteoporosis. So in cardiovascular health, I mean, it's a misnomer to call it a vitamin. It is really a hormone.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, fabulous information. Okay. Anyone else a question or comment for Susie, Dr. Susie Wyatt? Oh, yes, Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hi. I only found your site very recently.
Okay.
I have a son, 27, living with schizophrenia, and I've been trying to emphasize the nutritional piece. He's also addicted to cocaine, and there's so much I could ask, but obviously this nutritional piece is so critical. Would you be sharing whether there's ways to work with the doctor, like a distance for consulting? And he's interested also in, next best steps for kicking the cocaine. He is medicated with an antipsychotic injection med right now, wants to get off it.
Yeah, but I would say it would be best to work with someone in your community, and if there is someone who does functional medicine,
Mhm.
that would be like you can get online and look for functional medicine docs like in the area, and excuse me, they would be equipped to start addressing some of these underlying issues.
Mm.
And we generally speaking recommend just lowering the antipsychotic med rather than, Well,
Because
turkey,
I don't
well,
know him, I really couldn't comment on that. But what I have experienced is by getting these foundational pieces in place, very often I can either minimize the amount of medication, or I can pull people off the medications. But I don't want to ever touch that. If it's giving them stability, I don't ever want to touch that until these other pieces are in place first.
I hope
And
that's
then
helpful.
lowering would be appropriate.
Mhm. Mhm. And thank you, Susie. And Michelle, I would recommend staying with the Alliance. We have a lot of free education. We have a monthly lunch and learn that you would really benefit from learning a lot about as well, the nutritional piece. So stay connected to us. Thank you, both of you. Any other question for Dr. Susie Wyatt? I want to honor her time. We have just a couple minutes. Oh,
Deborah here, and I just wanted to follow on to your comments, Michelle. I'm going to post for everyone the link where you can find nutrition coaches and the Academy. It's really the same link as the Academy where many of us receive training. So I'll put that out there. There's level 1 and level 2 coaches are working in that functional realm. And I certainly applaud what Susie said, which is before you take down any support, you want to make sure you've bolstered up your base. So you don't want any, the roof falling in if you're into construction, right? And I do have one question for you, Susie, about, again, the linkage to the HPA, the adrenal system, and the very high occurrence of hypoglycemia in addiction, like in the 90s, and how that up and down of the blood sugar, that low of the blood sugar continues to kick into the adrenals to suck up the overload of insulin, and wondered if you have any thoughts about how you address that and how often you see it.
That's definitely, I completely agree with you, Deborah. That's definitely a phenomenon, and especially in early stages of recovery. So when people are coming out of withdrawal, they're in withdrawal, they're in post-acute withdrawal. That's very oftentimes when I'll see that hypoglycemic issue. And I would say most of that can be stabilized by really nutrition and getting those proteins in place and really helping to support the interface with insulin and oh my gosh, I can't think of it. Oh my gosh, it comes out from the liver.
Bile.
No, the hormone. Oh my gosh, I'm totally spacing it. When sugar goes low, the liver releases, it begins with a G. I'll think about it in a second here.
Okay.
Are you thinking of leptin?
No, it's not leptin. Oh my gosh, it is so critical. What is it?
Not the glyconeogenesis.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
By the hormone, I know.
oh my gosh, well, I can't remember the name of this hormone because I'm on the spot right now. But when we're having a hypoglycemic issue, that's a stress on the body. So cortisol is now saying, "Hey, wake up, liver, and release glucagon." There we go. And so then we get a spike, and now we're on a roller coaster. And but if we can utilize nutrition and keep consistent, either small meals, and really have that critical protein, having those good fatty acids. Though that will very much help to stabilize that, at least in my experience.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Okay. Wow. That was fantastic. Dr. Susie Wyatt. Yay.
This is so
We're
fun. I love geeking out about this stuff.
Yeah, well, most of us do too. I have I took like huge notes that I can't even read right now from your lecture, and your sharing. So thank you so much. We're so excited you're a part of the Alliance, and
I'm so happy to be with you all too. Thank you so much for the invitation.
And if everyone looks in the chat, you can go to Sovegna.com and you can read more about what Susie's doing here and all of us connected to Sovegna in Salt Lake City. And ask her questions, and you can get to your website from that too. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then I have a separate website. It has a little bit more information on it, and more of that psychiatric, the psychiatric piece, and that's just my name, SusieWyattMD.com.
Okay, so hopefully everybody got that too, SusieWyattMD.com as well.
Yeah.
So we want to thank you again, Susie, for coming
thank you so
and
much.
sharing with the Alliance, and thank you all for being here today. And if you're not
Thanks
a
for the
member
great
of
questions too. I really enjoyed those.
wonderful questions. If you're not a member of the Alliance, please join us. We need your support in our education work through the communities nationally and internationally. So again, thank you very much. And we will all see you next month. Look for our next month call in our newsletter and in our reach out. Okay. Bye for now, everybody.
Could you say the website one more time? Her
Go ahead, Susie.
Oh, it's SusieWyattMD.com.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
my last name is W-I-E.
Just remember.
Mhm.
And
Thank
just
you very
remember
much.
next week, the 30th, we're going to be having a trialing amino acids, which is a special.
Oh, Deborah, you cut out there. You're
Yeah,
having
Deborah,
the-
you're cutting
this
out
event,
a little
so
bit.
Check out events.
Yeah, you're kind of cutting out a little bit, Deborah. But everybody, if you sign up for our newsletter, you will get all these announcements, our free announcements. And if you become a member, you can hear all these replays. So go to the Alliance for AddictionSolutions.com and sign up for our newsletter and become a member. Okay,
I know
thanks.
my teacher is here, so I got to go. But thank you so
Okay.
much, and I love the Alliance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank you.
Great
so much.
presentation.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
Patty.
Spring.
Thank you.